Greetings and welcome to this session on library resources for Dr. Howard's SOW 6404 Social Work Research class. This session is being recorded during spring 2020 during the coronavirus pandemic. So the library building is actually closed at this time. However, the majority of our resources are available online. So you'll still be able to hopefully find the items that you need for your research this semester. So what we're seeing on the screen right now is the library's website. It is library.fau.edu. And the first thing to always do if you're working from off campus is go to this link that says Off Campus Connect, which is the icon that looks like a key. And on this page, we can log in with our FAUNet ID and password. And the reason you are asked to do something like this is because the resources you're going to be getting through our webpage, which include things like ebooks, databases, online journals, streaming video, the majority of this information is not being given away for free. It's information that the library pays licensing fees for to allow you to access. So that's why we need to log in. It does make your device wherever you are seem like it's on the FAU campus, and then these different vendors will recognize that you're affiliated with FAU. You'll also notice that once we logged in that the URL, the web address up here at the top, now includes the word Easy Proxy. So that's a quick way of knowing that you've successfully logged in. So what we're going to talk about today, if we go to this link where it says Research Guides, and then go into the link where it says Course Guides for Summer 2020, I put together most of the resources that I'm going to be talking about in one place, which is in this link under your course number. And there's quite a bit of information here. I'm not going to go into all of it in detail today, but it is here. So it's something you might want to go back and look at if you're not finding something that you need. But some of the things we'll be talking about today, well, logging in from off campus, we already did that. We'll talk about the library's catalog, which is a database that we can use to locate books and other materials owned by the library. Now, although we don't have access to the print books, we do have a lot of online ebooks, government documents, and streaming video that you can get through the library's catalog at this time. We'll talk then a little bit about what a peer-reviewed article is and what peer-reviewed journals are. And then we'll talk about finding journals if we know the title versus finding journal articles if we are looking for a subject. And we use databases to do that. So we'll look at one or two of those. We'll talk about if we don't see the full text of the article, how do we find it? And also OneSearch, which allows us to search multiple databases at one time. And if we have time, we'll mention a few other things as well. So I'm going to go back to the library's website. And the first thing we'll look at is the library catalog, which I had just mentioned. So this large blue box is where a lot of the resources that we can search can be found. However, instead of going into OneSearch first, I'm going to go to the library catalog. And so let's say I have a vague idea and want to find some information about homelessness or the homeless. I can just search for that word. And so again, in the library's catalog, this is going to be looking at things like books, ebooks, and various other sorts of information. And as we see the list here, we notice that we found over 2,000 items at FAU, and about half of those are available online, which is good for us because we don't have access at the moment to these print items. So we can actually maybe click on this link, either the number or the word online. And now we're just going to bring up those items that are available online. And it's still an awful lot. So here we want to think about different ways we can narrow our search down. So maybe we're interested in a particular subset of individuals who are experiencing homelessness. So veterans are one. Maybe we want to find something on families. So I've entered the word homeless families, and you notice that cut the number of items down to 458. All these are available online. And as we scroll down the list and look at these things, we can see that the dates are available. So there's one from 1989, 2000, 1993. So when I added that word families, it did bring back some of the print items. So I'm going to go back now and just look for the online ones again. Right, and that brings it down to 154. Now, another thing we can do is we can sort these items to bring up the newest ones first, if we were just interested in more recent materials. That way we'll see those first on the list. Okay, so now you notice we're seeing, here's a title that's an ebook from 2020, 2019, and so forth. This one is a streaming video. Some of these, you'll notice, are coming from government departments, and those would actually be government documents. So depending on what we want to look at, we can click on the title of one of these, or where it says Connect Now. And this typically is going to take us into a different database that includes the full text of this item. And so you notice now it says we're in the Taylor and Francis group, which is one of the providers of ebooks to our library. And what we're seeing on the screen here, it's giving us a little summary of the ebook, and then also the table of contents. We're able to download chapters of these particular books. Or we can view an abstract, which is just going to give us sort of a one-paragraph summary of the chapter. And then if we decided we wanted to read the whole thing, we can click on the chapter title and go into it that way. Or again, download the PDF of the chapter. So this is just one example of an ebook. We have a few different vendors that we get these from, and they look a bit different. Some of them have limited the number of people who can view the ebook at one time. This one, Taylor and Francis, does not do that, but some of the other ones like EBSCO and Proquest, in certain instances will only allow one person to view the ebook at a time. So that's just a quick example of an ebook. And I'm going to go back here to the library's catalog. And again, some of the other things that you can find online would include things like government documents, and you notice this took us into the Office of Policy Development and Research, and allows us to download these items in a variety of different ways. So this is probably sort of a report. It's 49 pages, so it's not like a large book, but bigger than a journal article. So these are one of these things that kind of are in the middle between books and journal articles. So, and again, these sorts of things that are published by the government, we have a lot of it available online in the library's catalog. Other types of information we can find in the library's catalog also include things like streaming video. Now, this one is about two girls, and it looks like they're in Bangladesh. So we could, again, narrow our search down if we were interested in just the United States, adding that phrase United States to our search as well to narrow it down. But I'm not going to spend too much time on the library's catalog, because what we really want to focus on today are journal articles. So One thing I'll mention is that the library's catalog will tell us if we own a journal. However, it doesn't give us the individual articles that are found in the journals. And so there are different ways we can access those through the library's webpage. So I'm going to go back there. Yes, so here again is the library's catalog, the library's webpage, that when we were just looking at the library's catalog, which is this tab. Now there are two tabs to the right of that. One says journals and one says databases. Now, it seems logical to think, well, if I wanted to find journal articles, I would go to journals. However, this particular search option is really only if you knew the name of a specific journal and wanted to find out, is this journal available in the library's collection in any of the databases that the library subscribes to. So there is a journal called the Journal of Social Work Education. So if I was looking for a particular article from there, one way I can see if the library has it is to search for the name of the journal. And note, I'm not looking for the title of the particular article, but just the name of the journal. And what this search will do is tell us which databases include that journal and what years are covered. And so we see there's the Journal of Social Work Education. And what's coming up below that are a variety of different databases that include that journal. And you'll notice that they do have different years that are covered. So we see some are going back to 1990, but here it says full text delay, 18 months. So what that means is the most recent 18 months aren't included at all. It's the same in some of these other ones. Others go to 2013. Here's one JSTOR, and that one you'll notice the full text delay is even longer, it's 8 years. But then finally, that last one we see on the list again is Taylor and Francis, and that one goes up to the present. And so what this means is that Taylor and Francis is actually the company that actually publishes that journal, and these other companies are what are called aggregators. And so they license content from a variety of different publishers for their databases. However, they will normally not include the most recent issues. And the reason for that is that way the publisher still gets to sell subscriptions to their journal. And that way the libraries don't say, well, we can get it through these other databases. Why do we need it through there? So again, you know, when you're looking for a particular article, you want to make sure that the database you're looking at includes that year. And when you go into one of these links, it'll take you to a page for that journal. And we'll also then usually give you a list of issues. And you can see that here it has the back issues. And depending on the year we were looking for, we can go into that year or volume number. And then it lists the individual issues, and we can go into one of those. And then we will see them kind of in page order that they appeared within that issue. And we can look for the page that our article starts on and then click on the PDF to get the article. There are other ways to search for a particular article as well using one search, and I'll talk more about that later. But anyhow, that is the journal search. Unless you're looking for articles from one particular journal, you don't want to use that one. You want to use databases. Databases are where hundreds and sometimes even thousands of journals can be combined into one place and allow you to search for articles on a subject. And so here, if I knew the title of a journal, I could search for it here. I can also browse the databases, and there's sort of an A to Z listing by titles. I can also get a list of databases by subjects. And you see there are things like counseling and social work. And there's a listing of some here as well. And actually, the two that we're going to be most concerned with social work are called the Social Index with full text and the Social Services Abstracts. So I'm going to look at Social Index with full text. And both of those are on that class webpage that I showed you earlier. So if you don't remember the steps to get back to it, you could always go there. So we are now in Social Index with full text. And now what we're going to be looking at in here will mostly primarily be journal articles. And so let's say I wanted to maybe in here find something on elder abuse. What I want to do when I enter my search, I could just enter elder abuse, but you'll notice that we have 3 boxes here that are connected with the word "and." And what we can do is we can think of some other words that mean something similar. So we can say maybe elder or senior or aged. And there are other ones we can think of, but we're connecting similar terms with a similar meaning using the word "or." And now we can hear abuse, we can enter abuse. We can maybe think of some words that mean something similar, perhaps neglect. And let's take a look and see how many items we find when we search for that. So we have over 10,000 items, so that's an awful lot. So we want to think about ways we can narrow the search down. And you notice the first thing I see is something about Korea. And as I scroll down a little bit, we might find things from some other countries as well. There's one about the United Kingdom. So maybe I want to focus my research on the United States. So I'll add in United States, and I just put it in quotation marks to search for the exact phrase. And this is adding another concept to our search, so that should narrow it down some also. So instead of having over 10,000, we now have over 2,000. So if you think about what we did earlier in the catalog, another way we can search, reduce the number of items we're getting is by date. Remember, we sorted by date before. Here we can actually just eliminate maybe anything older than about 10 years. So let's try that. So we had 2,300, and now we're down to 575. So here we're narrowing our search down. We can add concepts. We can narrow by date. Now, another important thing we want to do here is when we have the option and we're looking at journal articles, it's usually good to limit our search to what are called the peer-reviewed or scholarly journals. And what this means briefly, I could talk about this for quite a bit longer, what it means, but the article before it's published in the journal undergoes a process where third parties who are also experts in the field will review the research. They'll look at the manuscript, the types of methods the authors use, the conclusions they drew, to kind of ensure the quality of the research. So if we have that option, this is generally something we want to use. So let's see how much this reduces the search by. So most of the results we were getting in this database were from the scholarly peer-reviewed journal. So that is good. Now, if we did want to narrow our search further, we could add additional concepts. You'll notice over here, well, there's those 3 boxes. What can we do to add more concepts? This little plus sign allows us to add another row where maybe we're interested in something like prevention, for example. And again, we can search. So out of that 565, 160 also mention prevention. Okay, so let's take a look at what we have on the screen. So you'll notice next to each one of these items, we're seeing a title and then kind of a block of text. Now we can kind of unfold what this means and make it a little easier to read by clicking on the title. So when we click on the title, here it's actually telling us, oh, these are the authors. This is the source. That's the name of this journal, which is called Generations. These are the subjects that the article's about. So abuse of older people prevention is actually a search as a subject term that we can search by clicking on there. But just going a bit further down, we do see there's an abstract. So this is giving us kind of a one-paragraph summary of the article where we can then decide, do I want to read this whole thing? And then if we do, we can decide, or we can then click on the PDF full text, which will then take us to the actual article. And so here you can read the article itself. You notice here it's the PDF's coming up. There's 8 pages of the full article, which you can read. There are some options over here. So if you have Google Drive, you can save it to that. You can email or save the item to the folder. If you did want to create a folder in a database like this, you have to go to sign in, and then it'll give you an option to create an account. Another thing that we'll see in these, in many of these databases are what are called citation tools. Now, the thing about these is that APA has just updated their citation manual, and they are in the new 7th edition. So this particular format that you're getting out of here may or may not be in that citation format. So we'll talk more about that in a little while. So I'm going to close that, and let's see if we can go back to our results list here. Yes, so again, we're looking at these items. I just wanted to mention that with some of them, we'll see a link directly to the full text, which you can click on. Sometimes it'll say a PDF full text, and other times it might say HTML full text, which is going to give you more like a plain text file of the article, as you can see here. One thing you can do with this sort of thing is, you notice over here, you can actually download an MP3 of someone reading the article, and you can choose, do you want an American, Australian, or British accent? So if you're one of those people who are big multitaskers and you know, want to listen to articles while you are driving the car or working out on the treadmill or that kind of thing, that's an option that you'll have there. If you see the HTML full text, that normally can't be done with the PDF. So again, going back to the results, a lot of the results you'll notice do have the link to the full text. Sometimes you might see something different like linked full text. That'll normally also take you to that. Now, the thing that that sometimes happens is if you don't see a link to the full text, there will be this option that says find it at FAU. And so when you click on that find it at FAU, what this will do, it'll look at different databases that our library subscribes to see if the article is available in a different journal, in this other website that has this particular journal. And when you click on that, sometimes it'll take you right to the article, but other times it might not. So what I normally do here is I'll copy and paste the, highlight and copy the title of the article. And then if I went into this other site that has it, if it doesn't take me right to the article, I will be able to paste in the search. In this case, it looks like it did actually take us to the article itself, and here's the PDF. You notice it's a different database. This one is called Emerald Insight. And so by clicking on that Find It at FAU button, that actually is able to take us to full text that isn't included in the database we were searching in, which, as you remember, was this SOW index with full text. So I did also want to mention, as I go back up to the top, you'll notice it's up here, it says EBSCO host. So right now, in the current situation, there are two major database companies. One is called EBSCO, and the other one is called Proquest. And so these are kind of the giants of the database world that are like gobbling up the smaller companies. So the actual name of this database is SOW index with full text. It's not actually EBSCO. A lot of people say I was searching in EBSCO, but when they say that, there are many different EBSCO databases. So always remember the name of the particular database. In this case, SOW index with full text. So I'm going to close out of that one, and we'll take a brief look at the next one, which is called the Social Services Abstracts. And this one is a Proquest database, so it looks a little different. You'll see here it says Proquest. When we go into it, it gives us a basic search, so there's one search box. However, if we wanted to enter an advanced search like we just did, it does give us that option here as well. And also, as we scroll down, we see here's an option to limit to peer-reviewed and scholarly journals. We can add more rows to our search like we did earlier. And after we enter the search, we can also limit by year and just bring up the more recent articles. So I don't think I'm going to spend time right now actually going into a search here. It's very similar to what we just saw, but there is in each one there's a fair amount of overlap between the two, but you might find some things in one that you don't find in the other. So if you're someone who wants to be very thorough, then you might want to look at both. If you're finding enough to complete what you need to do, then one might be enough. If you're a doctoral student, then you'd probably want to look at both. So I'm going to, at this point, so again, those are our two major social work databases. I'm going to go back to those research guides, which are also called LibGuides, and go back to that guide for your class. And there's a few other things I want to mention before we wrap up. So some other databases that are useful for social work can be found on this page. Again, this is your class webpage. I'm not going to go into all of them. So just to let you know, they're there. So there are separate databases for things like psychology, such as PsycInfo, sociology, the sociological abstracts. There's a database that just has doctoral dissertations and master's theses, which in some cases can be useful as well. There's one called the Web of Science. So I'd like to spend a minute on this because it's interesting. And it sounds like a database that you would do science research on. However, this includes something called the Social Sciences Citation Index. It is not very noticeable from here, but you would go in under More Settings. And so here we're going to uncheck Science, Citation, Arts and Humanities, and Emerging. Now we're just going to search in the Social Sciences Citation Index. And so here, again, if I wanted to maybe search for something like homeless families that we looked at earlier, I can search here, and we'll see how many results we get in the Social Sciences Citation Index. So almost 1,500. Now, the thing that we can do in this database, which is very interesting, and you can see this is quite up to date because there are articles coming up from May and April 2020. But the thing that we can do in here, which is interesting, is we can kind of see which articles on the subject were most influential by sorting them by the number of times they were cited by other authors. And so now, instead of it bringing up the newest items, it's listing them by the number of times each one was cited. And you'll notice over to the right, it's telling us, well, this was cited 379 times, 366 times, and so forth. And you'll notice that these are coming up on kind of a variety of different subjects. One thing I might have done on my initial search is, instead of just adding the keywords homeless families, I'm going to search for the exact phrase, and this might be a way to make our search more relevant. So we had almost 1,500. If we search for the exact phrase, now we have 262. Now all these mention that phrase, homeless families, in some context. And now we're seeing also they're still being cited by the number of times that they've been cited by other authors. So again, ones that have been cited a lot will probably be a little bit older because they've been around longer and other people have had more time to cite them. So that's just a quick look at this Web of Science. In social work, sometimes you will need to deal with the legal system, or you may need to consult things like regulations or statutes dealing with a particular situation. Our library provides 2 databases where you can find this kind of information, Nexus, Uni, and Westlaw. I'm not going to go into them today. And also, we also have a variety of databases that include information on tests and measurements. And some of these, such as psych tests, will actually include the instruments. Things like the Mental Measurement Yearbook, a lot of those instruments are limited to licensed professionals. So you wouldn't be able to get the full text in most cases in there. The ones in psych tests are ones that are usually used in research studies and have been used to write journal articles and that kind of thing. So you might find something of interest there if you need a testing instrument for a particular subject. One search I mentioned at the beginning, we saw it right in the center of the library's webpage. One search is a tool that allows you to search hundreds of different databases at one time. So that's that big blue box on the library's webpage. Since I'm here, I'll just use this little search box that we have here to search for the phrase homeless families. I'm going to search all. And we can see how many items we get here. It should be quite high. Okay, so for some reason, I've defaulted into kind of an accessibility mode, which is interesting. But as I scroll down, you'll notice that it is listing these items. And these can be journal articles. So maybe instead of going through that list, it might be better to go in to one search right through the library's webpage. So I'm not certain why I defaulted. What I'm looking at now is an accessibility mode, which I don't normally use, but this might be for people who have visual issues and is easier for them to look at on a reader. So I'm not sure why that happened in this case. It normally doesn't, so hopefully for you it won't. But that's what happened today. So, but one search, to talk more about it, it does bring in content from all different subject areas. So the databases we looked at before focused more on social sciences and even social services. this would be looking at all different subject areas. So if I was looking at a subject like elder abuse, besides just getting it from a social service perspective, I might get things like nursing, criminal justice, and other disciplines, which may or may not be good for my particular topic. So the next tab over is the streaming videos, and these are databases where the content is actually video. And if you're interested, especially in clinical social work, we do have things like counseling and therapy in video, which includes both famous therapists doing sessions, giving lectures, and some of them have actual counseling sessions that you can watch as well. And there's even one on health and society, which can be useful for social workers as well. Interlibrary Loan is a service that the library has where during normal times we can obtain all sorts of things and borrow them from other libraries. Now, because of the pandemic and the closure of the library, it is still open, but they can only get you journal articles, and they will provide those for you through PDF. So they are still working. They cannot get you books or DVDs or any hard copy item, but they can get you the PDF of journal articles and chapters from books. If you never used it before, you'd want to go back to the library's webpage, or you can use the link here, which will take you to the Interlibrary Loan page. And if you've never used it before, if you scroll down, you can create an Interlibrary Loan account and then use that to request items through Interlibrary Loan. Citing your sources, in social work, you typically use the APA format. We used to refer people to use the OWL at Purdue. However, with this new style, the APA themselves has provided a lot of useful information. So apastyle.apa.org, if you scroll down a little bit, they'll give you a lot of the things we used to get through the OWL, such as examples of references, how do I cite a particular kind of item, like a journal article. And this will give you examples here of how to do that, how to cite it in parentheses within the body of your paper or the narrative. And there's other things here besides examples of how to cite things. There's examples of how to set up the paper. And by the way, APA now has, in this new version, two ways of citing things, one for undergraduate students and one for professionals. So do check with Dr. Howard as far as whether she wants you to use the professional way of citing or the student version. But you can find information about both of those here. And then finally, if you need help, the Need Help tab will give you different ways of contacting us. We do have an Ask a Librarian service. There are people from FAU mostly on there now during the pandemic, Monday through Friday from 9 to 5. When we're back in the building, we're there from 1 to 5 usually. However, there are other people who can answer your questions, librarians from other schools in the state who have access to our resources. So that's available to you as well. And again, if you went back to the first part of this page, my contact information is here, and you can email me if you're having any issues finding the information you need, or if you call Monday through Friday between 9 and 5, that number is forwarded to my cell phone, and you can get in touch with me that way. So that concludes the session for SOW 6404, and we hope you have a great semester. I'm going to say goodbye now and wish you a great semester this summer. Bye. And I will also stop recording.